Thanks everyone for being here. This is an exciting topic, and I'm really excited to have Raphael, Luc, and Carmel with us. So first off, I think it would be good for you guys to actually present yourselves and what you do and what your background is relating product branding.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Carmel. I run the EMEA marketing team at Aircall. In terms of branding, my background wasn't really in branding. I'm a marketer, but passionate about branding. And the Aircall rebrand was actually my first time dealing with branding, but learned a lot and excited to talk to you guys about it.
So I'm Luc, I'm a brand designer. I used to work at Mushu Mushu, a small design studio. For the one there that know Mushu Mushu, so we are shutting down Mushu Mushu. I will explain after the talk maybe. So we work with amazing brands like Luco, Aircall, Payfit, Slide, just for naming them. And I used to work in the design field for maybe 8 years. And yes, I'm very passionate about brand design, and I have a lot of things to say about brand design and agency. So happy to be there.
Hi everyone, I'm Raphael, the CEO of Luco. Maybe I have a small question to start. How many of you know the Luco? Okay, not too bad. I see one of our actually user. So Luco is a home insurance made simple and transparent, and we actually worked with Mushu a year ago to rebrand completely Luco when we actually also pivot and change our business model and offer. So I have no specific background in branding. I just think that's a topic I like. And so I've put a lot of passion and pleasure working on our brand, but I have no academic or specific background on this.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because we have kind of a more skilled startup that had a recent rebranding. If you didn't know, Aircall recently rebranded. Luc is obviously the agency point of view, and then we have very early stage startup point of view. So it's going to be interesting to get all these different viewpoints. So also I have one question for the audience. Who's in design? Okay, who's in marketing? Okay. And product in general, yeah, okay. All right, cool. So I think we can start with a pretty large question, but I guess how would you define branding? And under which team do you think it falls? And especially you, Luc, who do you usually interact with your clients?
So I think that the answer for what's branding is quite simple for me. It's mostly the experience that you can create for your customers. So the thing is that for us, it really belongs to everybody in the team. But regarding to the project that we've done, it usually depends on the size of the company. So for example, with Luco, we directly work with Raf, so with the CEO. And for Aircall, we directly work with Carmel, which is in charge of the marketing team. So it really depends on the size of the company. But yeah, the thing is that branding belongs to everybody in the team. So if we can meet everybody in the team, that's the perfect way to start a brand. But yes, that's usually how we work.
For me, branding is really who you are, like your identity, and probably also like your mission. It needs to be really aligned with actually how you think, work, and build inside the company. So, especially in like B2C company, which we are at Luco, it cannot be only like a marketing thing. I think you really need to live and live, like really be your branding. And I think that's it needs to represent your value and anything. And I think at least at Luco, our branding is really the way I see the company, and people feel and work in our company. So it's basically us and our identity.
I think for us it was very similar. It was like the look, tone, and feel of how we think about Aircall and how we wanted people to perceive Aircall. And who it falls under was an interesting question. And there was a lot of like back and forth on that. It was owned by marketing, but I think as well, everyone needs to be involved. But I think the real question there is when and like how to get everyone excited about it, but without too much opinion, or else the project doesn't really move forward.
And about that for Aircall, before the rebranding, did you already have designers who were just doing marketing assets, purely brand, and was that already separated from product design?
Yeah, so that's a great question. That was a big bottleneck for us actually. So we went through a lot of shifts in design at Aircall, and our marketing designer moved to be a product designer. So we were designless, and that was part of the big thing that sparked a rebrand, and actually defining a real design and like tone and brand to our name, because when we didn't have a designer, it was kind of like pulling things from all over the place and stock images and things that we don't like so much.
And Rafael at Luco, who's in charge of branding assets right now? Is it fully marketing or is it a little bit product? Because I know how it is in early stage startups.
So we don't have a product designer and a brand designer. We have one product designer that is doing a bit of everything. So like at most early stage startup. And he actually joined the team only a month ago, or maybe 3, but quite recently. So that's a big challenge when you're quite early. You need to create visual content, but it's really hard to actually have it align with who you are and your identity. And you need to give people freedom to actually do things, make mistakes, move, and it should not be completely out of your branding. So maybe I was a bit the police of the branding, probably because I like it. I probably also did a lot of mistakes, and I know, like being a CEO, if you like too much something, it can also be a pain for the people in charge of it. So, for example, I try to not interfere too much in our product design anymore now, because if I do this, then I will kill the creativity and the energy of the person in charge. So it's always a balance of you're the legacy and the origin of the concept and what's lead to what is now, and you need to then let it go and let it live also. So it's always a balance. I think it's quite challenging to find the right balance, but that's also what is interesting.
And so, yeah, I guess this kind of ties back to the next question I had, which is how much should realistically a startup invest in their very first branding? And so I don't know, Carmel, you were the first marketeer at Aircall, so I don't know how you remember how it was, if branding was a big thing when you got there. But I know Luco has an interesting story because you guys put a lot of care in it from the very start and invested a lot. And I think there are a lot of entrepreneurs in the room, so that could be interesting for them to hear about.
So actually, the branding we have now was not our first branding. We actually work on something before with an agency too. Yes, maybe we can show. So that was so Luco at the beginning. We are building AI to protect homes, and we were doing this as a B2C, but mainly as a B2B2C, working with traditional insurer. So our branding was not that important. We need to have a visual existence and exist, but it was not a key success factor in our business at that time. So we start with this. I don't know if, yeah. So I mean, so that was the product was never really this, but that was the tangible device that we brought to people to actually get the data we needed to do our job. And so yeah, that was the beginning. So it looks like this, and that was the team where we actually launch insurance, the team was actually this big. And we start to really, at that time when we launched insurance, to be a credible alternative to a huge brand like AXA, Allianz, La Maif, or whatever. You cannot do this with a shitty branding. You really need to, even if you're really small, you need to project an image of something that is really finished, very strong, and still quite fresh and innovative. But you cannot go in a B2C market with a very mass market B2C with a heavy competitor in front of you with a half-finished branding. So that was a very, very strong conviction from me. We are a consumer product, so you need to be really good at consumer and marketing. And so it was not even a choice. It was like you had to be really good and invest a lot in this from the early days of your insurance company. And so yeah, that was the brand, the previous branding. And then working with Mushu, we came to this. Before we actually contact Mushu and look at any like properly the branding, we conceptualize what was Luco value, what was our mission, what was our manifesto, and we took really a lot of time to do this. So we probably took 2 to 3 months, which was really a long time at that time for us. We work with more startup like freelancer, but also with very traditional branding people from like BETC or like very more like more traditional agency. And after having a lot of consulting a lot of people, making our own opinion, really work on it like 5-10 times on who we are, what are the feelings we want to transmit, what is Luco mission. Then we start working on the visual identity. But before we work on this, I think it was really important to know who we are and what we want to project.
Does anyone have a question? No. About that, I think branding is very intangible, and so having like clear outputs of what when you're gonna be working on branding, what is like concretely what are you gonna be coming out with, is I mean a question I ask myself at least. So what were your outputs? Do you have examples of those?
Our output was quite simple. We needed a website. Like it's like if you go to an agency and you say, I need a website. It was not like this, but really we needed to basically have a website where people can buy insurance. So it was a very tangible, and we actually start everything from scratch, which I think was a good thing to rethink all the experience, all the value, everything from scratch. So that was a very tangible output, and we had a first step, which was define our identity. And then we actually define this identity. We work on all the subscription and the website. I think the identity also evolved during the website creation, as it's still evolving now. Yeah.
Me? All right.
Oh yeah, I had asked you a question.
For us, it was actually a little bit different than for you. We're a SaaS company, so less sexy than B2C. And we didn't have marketing until like 2 years into Aircall. They really focused on scaling, selling, making sure the product worked. And we had a designer, and there was like a big shift in the organization, and the designer left, and then we were kind of left with what we had. And as a marketer, it was a different experience because it was like to make do with what we had for a long time. Only 2 years after I joined, so 4 years of Aircall's existence, we went through a big rebrand and got like real proper branding. Yeah, I think you have some photos of what it used to look like. But anyways, yeah, so it started with, we need to not look like WhatsApp anymore. We're a real company now, and we need to differentiate ourselves. Yeah, so that was the first thing. And the second thing was we needed, it all started from not looking like WhatsApp and a sense of consistency. That was like the big push for me of why we needed to get it. We needed to be consistent. And that stemmed from not having assets, and we were spending a ton of money on trade shows. We started spending a ton of money on online acquisition. And especially in trade shows, when you're printing this kind of green and it prints like a different green everywhere, it gets frustrating, especially on marketing perspective. So that was one of the main, one of the main drivers of why we decided that it's now that we need to do it, so that we could be consistent. And then with that came the talk, especially with our founders, of our tone and what we want to convey to our customers and to our partners, et cetera. And then we matured the whole values of Aircall and like redefined them and decided what we want to convey in our new brand. But the core thing was we wanted to be consistent across the board.
Cool, thanks. And from the agency perspective, Luc, when people come to you, first of all, have you noticed a pattern of different phases, like either it's early stage or it's post-Series A, or of like when people are thinking about branding and it becomes a topic, and what do they come with? Like, what kind of material do you ask from them?
So the very first thing is that we ask for money. That's the main purpose of Mushu Mushu. I think the interesting part is that there's not like any specific pattern regarding to the size or the mission of the company, but it's more about the why. Why are you doing the rebranding? And we have very, thanks to brand that we made with Aircall, Luco, we had a lot of people reaching us saying, oh, I need a website, I need a new branding. Why? And when people don't really have any specific answer for that, it surely means that you don't really need a rebrand or you don't really need to update your website. So the first thing is that why you need a rebrand, a branding, or a website. And in terms of content, what we usually ask is the very basic stuff like what's your mission? We also need to feel in love with the team. So that's why we have a very different type of company that we used to work with. Because, for example, Aircall is like a huge thing, and when they reach us, we are like, not sure. Why are you reaching us? We are very small. We are a tiny studio based in Bordeaux. Maybe we are cheap, but we don't really understand the why. And we had this discussion with Carmel and Manu. And then we understand that, we understand the mission, we understand that we really love the team. For example, for Luco, that was quite the same. So Raf reached me, I was like, insurance, not really sure about that. But then we had a short call and I really get what he had in mind. So it's also something that really helped us. And yes, I think that's the most interesting part of that is the relation that you're building with the team. And the fact that you really want to learn the business that they are running. Because if you don't really care about insurance, it's not going to work. If you don't really care about like the mission of Aircall, that is not just a phone system, but more getting closer to your customer and giving the best experience as you can work on that topic. So I think that's the main thing. If you're looking for an agency, is finding the team that will really love your product and the people in your team.
I have something to add. That was one thing that stood out to us a lot with Mushu Mushu. We interviewed a ton of agencies in New York. We have an office in New York, and most of the marketing team sits in New York. So like all the big shot agencies, like the agency that did Dropbox, etc. And then Manu, my colleague, was like, well, we should look at Mushu Mushu. And I was like, oh, it's like this tiny studio in Bordeaux. Like, no. And he convinced me anyways, and we met them. And what I realized that was so important and that Luc was mentioning is like the fit. And Mushu Mushu wasn't like, okay, we want your money. Like, you're a big company. You have a bunch to spend. Like, let's go. They were like, well, we'll choose you if we think that you're a good fit for us too. And that's normally not an agency mindset, that they kind of assess you too and tell you if you're a good fit for them. And that's when I like Mushu Mushu left the office after the first time, and I told Manu like, oh wow, like I think we could actually like have a real relationship here, and it's not like agency where like, okay, the contract ends and then the relationship ends. And rebrand and branding in general is a lot of work. It's very stressful, great, but stressful. And having a very good fit with your agency, I think, is one of like the most important things, I would say.
Does anyone have questions? Please feel free. Oh, there we go.
Of course, Chris. You mentioned customers coming to you and asking for a rebrand, and you were like, yeah, but why? And so what's the worst reasons that you've heard for a rebrand, and what's the like the really good ones?
The worst one, oh, you did something great for this blah blah brand. I want the same thing, but there was like no goal, no like any topic about branding. So that may be the worst thing that you can hear about that. And the best, so I don't want to say that just because Raf is just next to me and we don't have any agency anymore. So that's not the topic there. But yes, I really fall in love with the mission of Luco. And for people that know Oscar, for people that know big brand like that in the US, or even Alan in France, I was like, okay, this is going to be like that big, and I want to be part of that. And the cool thing when you're creating a brand, just like when you're working on product, is that you think, okay, somebody at some point will see the work I've done, and that could impact their life in a positive or negative way, hopefully in a positive way. But that's the main thing. I was like, people are going to subscribe to an insurance, and they will see our cards, or they will see our little bird, or whatever. And that's a big thing for us, and it's also like a very day-to-day mission for them. So I really enjoy that. It's just like, I don't know if you know Slate, it's a not app thing. And it's like when you can help a brand that impact the daily life of people, it's amazing.
Maybe on the agency model and experience, I think and that's probably a reason why Mushu is stopping, is being an agency, it can be a bit a prostitution for your brain. Like you really sell your creativity to someone external to your like long-term life and yeah, like to you. I think and the clients can be really a pain. I think I've been a pain at some time, and probably that's why you stop. But what I really enjoy when we were working is like you can feel that the guy in front of you is really putting all his like passion and love, and like they do it with all their mind and alignment. And it's very, I mean, it's true for design, but also for different things. But it's really hard to do consulting and not being part of a company and be aligned with it. And I think that's one of the key reasons you do such a great work, is like you are doing it with your body and soul. And when you find people that are skilled and are working like this, it's actually why you get the most essence of the creativity and all this thing. And it's hard to find actually. And there's one less in Paris now, but.
And since you both outsourced your brands, it does make it a little bit more difficult, I imagine, to evolve after. And so I wonder how you're tackling that. I mean, it's very recent for you at Aircall, but and if you have conversations about this with Mushu during the branding process.
Yeah, so we went through the rebrand about a month ago, so it's very, very new for us. But we are tackling it as we speak. Just today I saw an illustration that we came up with, and it was kind of off-brand, and I'm like the brand police now. So I was like, whoa, no. So I think it's like a slow evolution. We're for sure going to evolve from like the structure and like fundamentals that Mushu gave us. But I think it's a process that we have to find like the right balance between still keeping the core of what we came up with them, but also evolving and adding our own personal touch. But one thing we talked about with Mushu when we knew that they were stopping and we knew that we wanted to continue working with Luc and Damien was to do workshops for our marketing team and for our product designers, so that we can continue to evolve the brand and also educate them on like why we chose what we chose, and to be sure that A, we're on the same page, but B, that they understand the process behind the brand. And so when they're designing, they know what the designers in the first place had in mind for the brand. And I think that's a big thing, and that's really important.
So we started the brand where we were actually not on the market, and Luco was just an idea and a proposal. We were selling a concept, and now we actually a real thing. We are like #1 in France, and we are going to we start to be a real kind of beginning of established company. So the way we talk, the proposition value, our identity is changing. And so we actually start last week to redefine what was Luco now and what was the way we should talk and address when we communicate. We will first start to redefine conceptually what we are and how we should talk, and then we will probably evolve the brand. But I think the brand is what you are at the moment, and probably, I don't know, the school you graduate from, it's defined probably quite a lot who you are, and then you can make it evolve and change. And the people who work together on it, bring their idea and their feeling. So I don't see any break. It's just a slight evolution. And if you have strong basis, it's way easier to evolve and keep doing really good work than if you start with shitty things.
Yeah, and maybe one thing that I can add to that is that so we used to work with Lattice. It's a platform management company based in San Francisco, and I'm still working there. And the thing about brand design is that, and I've learned that with them, is that not everything should be perfect, but should be made on purpose and achieve the main goal. So it can also help you to be less stressed when you're raising something. So, for example, you can accept that something is not perfect, but at least it's working. So it's also something that people should keep in mind. And that's why if you're moving your brand with new stuff and whatever, if it's responding to a purpose, it's okay. So you shouldn't be afraid about that. That's maybe one of the lessons I've learned there.
Do you have an example of a specific asset, or I don't know, in a situation where
yeah, just like all the assets that you usually don't take too much time for that, like webinars, maybe social posts, blog illustration, all that stuff. If it fit like the main purpose, it's okay, but you don't have to spend like 1 week on that. One day could be good. It's not fully perfect, but it's okay. It's just like one thing that will be seen one time, so you don't have to stress about that.
Hello, so thanks a lot for your talk. I was wondering if there were to choose like a priority, one over the other, who would you be more designing for, the client, the end user or client, or the personality of the company who wants to like show their personality?
Yeah. That's a good question. To be honest, I think it's really close, because if you're helping a company to sell something that doesn't really match what the company is, it's not going to work. So when you're working for a company and you are creating design stuff, it's really close from what they are going to sell. So it's also part of their mission. So it's one thing. It's not like you're designing just for the end user. But I get your point. Sometimes it's the same people that reach us to create a website for the sake of creating a website or brand design. I'm pretty sure they are not going well in terms of business. So people that want to sell something and they're really passionate about that and they really care about that, they care about the end user. So it's just one thing. I think you don't really have to choose between both of them.
I have a question for you, Carmel. How did you define what was missing in the way you were perceived as a brand that you tried to inject in the new brand? And my second question for Luke is, do you think that you have to rebrand your external communication at the same time of your product? Or just after?
Okay, so that's a good question. And it was something we thought about a lot. I think what it took was we never fully defined what our values were until or we were changing them a lot until 2 years into Aircall. And last year, we have an offsite every year. And last year we were in Marrakesh and we took all of the founders together and the leadership team of Aircall. And the content manager at Aircall did a whole session for them on what are our values. And we came up with this big list of what our values were. And then I took that list and looked and was okay, well, there's things missing here. We say that we're more of a feminine brand, that we're modern, that we're outspoken, etc. And I was looking at our website and looking at how we're perceived by customers, really. And that made me start thinking that we're missing some of the things that we say we're proud of, but that you can't really see them visually. And that's where our whole conversation got prompted.
So just to be sure I remember the question well, it was, do you have to release the product at the same time that you're releasing the brand new communication? That's a tough question because it usually won't happen. Because, for example, for Aircall, we release the brand a little bit before the upcoming product release, but it's not like a roadblock, meaning that when you're creating a new brand, it should sell something that you will sell at some point. So it's not like a big deal. Obviously, if you're branding something that is not what the end user will experience, it's like you're creating a fake branding. But yes, in terms of timeline, I think you don't have to stress that much for what we are doing. I mean, we are all doing important stuff, but it's not about 1 week or 1 month, and we already experienced that. If you have to wait a little bit more, wait. If you want to have the best product, it's better to have the best product before, after the release of the brand. It doesn't really matter if your end user are happy, because the branding is just a tool for you to sell more. It's not like it's related to your mission, but it's most like the toolkit of the global experience that you're providing. So, for example, if you do the best logo for an insurance company, but they are doing some shit, it won't work. It's just like the good thing that happened for the people in their experience. And it's the same for every product, in my opinion.
I think for us, as a tip, we're supposed to come out with a new phone app. Of course, in product and tech roadmap, we all know things get delayed by a lot. So we kind of anticipated that when we saw the deadline was being pushed. And I said, no, we have a hard launch for the rebrand. It has to happen. So we did it in 2 phases. So we said, okay, we know that the new phone app will be released later, but let's find a compromise. And so what we did was we changed all the minor design things within the phone and within the dashboard. So the logo, the colors, the font, small stuff that still makes a difference of the look and feel, but we haven't launched completely the new phone app yet. And I think that was a compromise, and it was kind of like the best of both worlds because the customers felt it and were happy and they saw change. The marketing was happy because it was like aligned with the new website, and the tech was happy because they could sleep at night. So, you know.
So I have a question kind of related. So how closely were you working with product design? And you mentioned when we talked together that you were talking with Gucci quite a lot. Gucci is the head of design at Aircall, but he wasn't heading the project. So I'm curious about how that relation went and how much input they had into the whole rebranding.
Yeah, so Goche only joined like towards the very, very end of the project. So unfortunately, we didn't have most of his insights throughout the project. But in terms of tech and product, to be honest, we didn't work so closely with them. Manu, the counterpart to my project, my partner, he was a product designer, so he was very close to product and like quite aligned with what was going on. But when we pitched this whole idea of rebranding, our promise was that it's not going to affect tech and product too much. Of course, it ended up having an impact because, I mean, the design that we came up with is now being implemented like in our applications, in our dashboard, etc. But it was really a marketing thing, we had the input from the design team when we would like show certain marks within the project, but it was more of like showing it and, you know, getting an opinion, but not too much. Like we kept it kind of like a marketing thing. And we kept it as a surprise for a very, very long time. That was like our thing. We wanted it to be a huge surprise for the whole company. So we tried to involve as little people as possible in order to keep the element of surprise.
Yeah, so I have a question. I think you may have answered this question because I was a little bit late. It's about, do you have any KPIs to measure the rebranding of your companies? Like, what's the ROI of rebranding?
It was a question I had, but I hadn't asked yet. So.
Do you want to answer first? No, me. That's a really hard one. Something that Aircall founders ask me quite often. The KPIs. Well, I think it's a few things. And I think the biggest one was we wanted to split up the rebrand between getting our employees of Aircall really excited and getting our customers and prospects and partners really excited. So it was like an internal and an external thing. And I don't think it's something that's necessarily like measurable in numbers, but could be measurable in impact. So first of all, we see an impact now on the way our teams work internally. We have a ton of assets, which create efficiency and create consistency of the brand, like within the company and also externally. Like slide decks and all kinds of things that like sales needs for sales enablement tools, that marketing needs for brochure and events and things like that, which were a huge, huge, huge bottleneck for us before. We were like outsourcing like crazy. We were paying a ton of money to freelancers and never happy with what we got. So it's made things a lot easier for us in that sense. So that's one thing, and that's a big upside that we feel across the company. And the second thing I would say is getting our customers and partners, as I said, excited. And we really felt that. I mean, we got like so many of our customers reached out to us after the rebrand on like intercom or like emailing their customer success manager and like congratulating us and saying how like they love the new website. They can like really relate, that they think it's so sleek and modern, and that they feel like Aircall really values themselves. We always say like we're a modern phone system, and now we actually have a modern website, and that they could notice the difference. And for us, that was a big thing. It was about conveying our values, and when we felt that our customers really felt that, we were happy.
So we had no KPI for this as we launch our product at the same time as the new branding. I think our best KPI is revenue, and really it's a conviction, and it's hard to track it. But we actually asked a frequent survey on how big people perceive Luco was in terms of team, and the answer to this survey was, we always look like twice bigger than we are in reality. And I think the branding and the fact that it was quite finished really helped to position ourselves as a quite credible and established offer. And really was a key thing in the fact that we had a quite successful launch that after skyrocketed us for the next step. And I account like branding as half of our success in the early months. Insurance is a very intangible product. It's impossible for a normal consumer to understand what they really buy and what's really the product. And so it's a lot of intangible and emotional things you value you bring, and branding was really key for us.
Any other questions? Okay.
Okay, here it is. It's a very obscene question, and I'm already sorry to ask it, but what's the price for a brand, and how do you price it? Because I guess as the unlaunched company like Luco was, and as a already launched company as Aircall was, might be a different price.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I can answer about that. So the way we usually charge at Mushu Mushu is based on it's a daily rate. So for every person that will produce, we charge like €1,000. And we usually estimate the time based on our experience. So obviously it's related to many aspects, like the duration that you will have your client, the availability from your client, and all that stuff. It can really depend in terms of timeline, and you will have usually you have more days than expected. But project from brand design could be from 20K to 50K for us. But we know some company that actually you reach the entrance ticket, for example, for Weno and Collins, I think, it's close to 200, 300 K euros. So it really depends on the company, the size, what you're looking for. And you can have a like cheap company that can produce really great design. So, you know, it's just like a secret recipe. But yes, it's the way we did it.
So I have a question about leadership at Aircall and how involved they were in giving their opinion, because I guess it would be interesting to imagine a situation where Rafael, in a few years, you have to rebrand, and you're not heading the rebrand. And so how involved were they, and was it important for them to be involved?
Yeah, so that's why when you were talking about like giving your team space now, I was like nodding along because that's what I was hoping and praying for from our leadership team. Yeah, it was a big thing. Our founders are still at Aircall, all four of them. So Aircall is their baby, and they were obviously very, very attached to the brand. So we had to tread very carefully, even like we weren't calling it rebrand, we were calling it brand refresh to like make sure that everyone was like no feelings hurt. And how involved were they? So we chose not to make them very involved, and we chose that specifically because all four of them are very unique and all have very different opinions, and getting them all in a room is a lot of opinions, and it kind of doesn't end. So what we decided was that we were going to have very specific points in time within the project that we were going to show them the status that we were at. If there were any like really big red flags, then we would say like, okay, we need to go back and fix some things or like rethink. But we didn't involve them in every single process. So for example, for the logo, we had a ton of iterations before we reached the final conclusion of what we liked. And once we had the logo and the colors and like, this is pretty much the slide that we show them, the logo and why we came up with the logo. Only then we pitched it to them and showed them what we're thinking. And that actually got them really excited. But for us, we knew that we can't just come to them with an idea and like brainstorm together. We need to come with something concrete to show them, to pitch them on it, and they will 99% be on board. And that was the case, and it was really great. And so, yeah, we chose not to involve them too much.
And the idea to refresh the brand was from marketing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so what was the main reason that triggered their okay to do this whole big project that costs money and time and energy?
Yeah, that was a big one too. So we prepared like this big presentation on why we need to do it and where it's going. And they really weren't convinced. And they were like, no, it's just the colors and it's just the logo, but we actually like it. And like, it was a bit of a soft spot and a hard topic to convey. So we came up with a big presentation of why we need to do it and where the future of our company is going, and how a strong brand is gonna take us there. Eventually they okayed it, but they weren't super excited. And when we presented to them actually the new branding, with the video. And this, to give you all tips, is the key thing that got everyone very excited. The super talented motion designer at Mushu Mushu created this like a teaser video for us with what this brand could potentially look like after we chose the logo. And it was with like really loud and good music. And we went into a room with them, we did the presentation, and we ended with this video. We like turned off the lights, put the music on full blast, and they were sold. Like they left that room being like, oh my God, when is this gonna launch? Like it really sold them. So I think that for anyone that's considering rebranding, going into any presentations or pitches that you need to make with strong visuals is really important. And B, there's nothing better than motion design that like gets people to really, really visualize it. And I think that's key.
Are there any questions? Oh yeah, 2 questions.
Quick question regarding what has the most impact in the brand? Is it more the logo, the website, the font? So is it like a holistic thing, just broadly today, because things are changing a lot regarding brands?
I mean, just to get your point, what part of the brand has there's no good answer. It's like it really depends on the company. For example, just like Carmel said, we work a lot on the sales deck. And usually that's also what sells a lot for us, is saying that we are going to do useful stuff. So for example, when you're looking at brand design, It's usually like, oh, we need a business card, we need a billboard, and all stuff that are sexy but not used on an everyday basis. So the thing that at least you can really imagine impactful are the ones that are used every day. So a website, when you get the most of your user from that, it's useful. A sales deck, if you have like mini demo to showcase your product, it's useful. It could be social ads, display ads. It really depends. But the way that you can think about that is the day-to-day stuff that you will use with your brand. So yes, I don't know if it's answer your question.
Okay, so my question is about entrepreneurs and founders who try to rebrand themselves as personal branding through their company. Is this very loable? Or there is a balance that founders need to make between personal branding and their company's branding?
Yeah, can you repeat the question? Just to be sure I got it completely.
Okay, so some founders, not just founders, even employees of the company, try to brand themselves like we exist, we do this and this, but through the rebranding of their company. Like to use, for example, especially for founders who use their first name or second name as a name for their company. Is this something that you think it's a good idea or not at all?
Like the incarnation of the company, how involved and how do you think your company image is based on your founder or one of your founder? Is this?
Yeah, this is a one way to say it.
So that's a discussion we had quite a lot at Luco. At Luco, we have a very collective way of working, and I don't feel comfortable always be the one talking about Luco in the media. Or, I mean, I like it, but it's not the way I see what is really Luco. But on the contrary, it's also a very effective way to have always the same guy with the same. Normally, I have my Luco jumper, and it's like marketing. You need to basically say 10,000 times the same thing with the same message with the same guys, so people can fix it even more when you start from nowhere. So I think it's a very efficient way. I think when you mature more, it's important to have other voice of the company that can talk for a different subject. And we actually conclude that I should talk most of the time now because we're still not as mature as we aim to be. And then probably we're gonna have more voice from Luco talking. I think it's more a communication thing than a branding because a founder and a brand, I mean, it's of course the incarnation of the company, but it's not something you choose and you can fire your founder, but it's you take it and then you live with it. I think, and maybe about branding, that's something actually I'm surprised we never define is the voice or the visual, the audio and the identity of your company. We actually start doing video and with voice, and it's really when you hear a company and that's really work on their audio identity. It's also very very strong incarnation of the brand. I think that's something we kind of miss most of the time in the internet era, and I think it's lame.
To ensure consistency, do you guys have brand guidelines that are evolving that you write and that everyone can access? Whether it's like tone, voice, design faux pas, all those things.
Yeah, so our brand guidelines are actually we had like a tone and a voice much before we had actual like design guidelines. We've had a content team for a while that is in charge of our blog and our website, and they're in charge of the tone. But for the brand guidelines, That's to ensure consistency. Yes, now we have a brand book and there's strict guidelines, and that's part of the reason we needed this so badly, is because before people were using greens in like all shades that you can only imagine and saying it's the logo. So I think a big part as well that played a role in this and in being consistent is getting everyone, as I said before, like very excited because we made this such a big deal internally. Like it was the huge surprise. Everyone wanted to know what the new logo was and what the new color was, and they were all really curious. And then we had this like huge launch party internally, and it was suddenly like a surprise, and they saw everything. They were really excited, and so everyone's really passionate about it now. And I created the day of the rebrand. I knew it was going to be crazy afterwards, and people like pinging me, asking questions all the time. So my team and I created like a rebrand space Slack channel, and everyone is posting on there like, "Oh, I found this document doesn't have the new logo, and the 404 page doesn't have the new logo, and whatever." And maybe you can see it as a little bit annoying to have like a million Slacks every day about it, but it shows that everyone cares and they care about the consistency and they want the brand to look good because they're passionate. And I think that's the best way to keep the brand consistent is really rallying everyone within the company.
Yes. We've been talking about visual guidelines, but the name looks like you don't talk about the name. I want to first understand what Luco means and how did you come up with it. Aircall seems a bit descriptive, so it's. Did you at some point think about the challenge in the name also or not? And also, how does the name impact the creation of the whole brand? Because you sure have an idea about.
So the name of Luco comes from my co-founder. I think is the guy I know who care less about branding and see less the value of branding. And we had a very mathematical approach to it. Basically, he gets a lot of four-letter word, and then add a bot running on Google, and then find for a very engineer way of finding it. He came, and I didn't he say, okay, it's gonna be Luco, and I was okay, and then I liked it. So there's never been a real, and we start with the name of Luco when. Actually, he started on his own before I met him with the name of Luco, and what we are doing has nothing to do with what we're doing now. It was like a very geeky engineering stuff, but it's just a name it's quite easy to remember, and it's 4 letters and so on. So we said, okay, it's fine. And then, but when we actually rebrand Luco, we actually saw as maybe a challenge or a threat to keep this name. Maybe like the K is quite, I don't know, strong. Is it really what the image we want to project is very round? It's very like what we sell is peace of mind and like tranquility. Is the K match with this and so on? And we actually discuss with that's when we discuss with these like big guys from BTC or like with 20 years of experience in branding and so on, and say, yeah, I mean, I don't know, you can still change your name. And I think we saw in the last months very successful rebranding. I mean, you can like it or not, but it's you forget the previous name. So I mean, that's the story of Luco, and now it's like the bird. The bird was also from our previous identity. I remember having a strong discussion with Luc. I didn't want to let the bird go, basically, and that's when founder had to attach to something. The bird was really. It was like, yeah, it was really something important, and it was really how we projected Luco at that time. Now, if you ask me about the bird, I think the nest is important, but the bird itself, we actually use it quite rarely. And so, yeah, I mean, with the time you evolve and so on, but I think I couldn't he proposed me several times, like different bird or no bird and so on. I was like, no, the bird I have in mind is this one, and and that's actually when we lose probably 2 weeks in designing the thing, and then now, yeah, you let it go. So that's why you see brand living.
Okay, so from my perspective, So yes, it was a pain, but also it's not a real big deal because at the end we created a brand system that could work with the bird and without the bird, and that's why also I think that you are mostly okay with letting the bird fly by his own. That's beautiful. But the fact about the name, to be honest, I don't have any answer because, for example, Aircall, you can say, okay, this name is a bit, okay, but it's not like the best name or you don't refer about Aircall, but at least Aircall is very explicit about what it's doing. Luco, it's like, it could be anything. So I don't have any specific answer, I'm sorry about that. But maybe there's some name that you won't work with, and that's also a good point. But usually when you create the brand that reflects what the mission is, any kind of name could work. So for example, I'm looking for PayFit. It's a good name, but not that much. But the brand itself and all the way they are selling the product is working, and that's the main point. And PayFit is short, and you can remember PayFit. But PayFit for payroll is okay, but yes, it does not like any big meaning behind that. It's just like Gusto in the US for the payroll. You can Oscar for the insurance. It's related to the skeleton, but there's not like big stuff behind the name. Mushu Mushu. Mushu is Basque, it means kiss. Okay, so there's not like any big stuff around the name, but more like stuff that you don't want to do with the name being insulting. I mean, it depends on the mission of your company, but it's more like this way I'm thinking about the naming of a brand.
Maybe just a milestone can be when you go international. Like you start in France, you have a great name,
yes.
Sounds great to French, and then suddenly you go to the States, and like nobody gets your name. We had that case at Screen. Like we say screen, we're like, yeah, we get it. And people are like, screen? Like, no, screen. Like you have to say it 10 times. So that might be a milestone in the company when you want to change the name. Maybe.
Yeah, but you can even sell the fact that people remember screen because you have to create this conversation where they have to remember screen.
Yeah. That's so, the first time you hear it, like screen.
Screen. It's not like the best one. But the logo is beautiful. I don't know which agency work on that, but...
Are there any other questions? Okay. Oh.
Hey, I was wondering for your customer, how did you build the storytelling around the rebranding?
So at Aircall, we thought a lot about customer centricity. It's been like a very big topic on our mind since the beginning of the year. And Olivier, the CEO, had like a big presentation to the whole company in January on like how each team is going to be customer centric. And marketing historically is not the most customer centric, to be honest. And so we thought a lot about how marketing is going to contribute to customer centricity. And for us, this really came in the branding through a few ways. I think the biggest one was showcasing our customers on our website. So we had a lot of back and forth with Mushu Mushu on how to do this. And we ended up coming up with the homepage having customer quotes on different use cases of Aircall. And throughout the website, you can go on a bunch of different pages and you see like real use cases of our customers. So that was a great thing for us because first of all, we show our customers on our website. And second of all, it created this great conversation with our customers on like, we love you and we want to showcase you and this is like free branding for you too and we're proud that you're our customer. Can we put you on our website even if it's just your logo and not your quote? And they got really excited and they really appreciated that. So that was one thing in terms of the branding. And the second thing is we took the branding as an opportunity to reach out to our customers in a few different ways and to show them that we care about them. So we had like a newsletter that was dedicated to them. And now actually just like it was delivered, I think this week, we did customer gift boxes. So to our like top 400 customers in the US and in Europe. We sent gift boxes with handwritten notes by each one of their customer success managers with like a bunch of new cool goodies and like swag with all the new branding as like an extra way to reach out. And so that was another way.
Yeah, I have a question about. Well, we slightly. Some of you already talked about it a little bit, but a question about more about tone of voice and about like branding in a sense of words and content. Because as I understand, Mushu is not its branding studio is mostly focused on visual, right? It's a design studio. So then I guess the question is more for you two. Like, at what point in the process of rebranding do you start thinking about a tone of voice? About the way you use your words to connect with your consumers and that kind of stuff?
That's a great question. And for us, actually, we defined our voice much before we defined our visual design. So we were already like making edits to our website in terms of tone of voice before. And that's actually what helped us come up with the brand a lot. When we were briefing Mushu Mushu on like what we're looking for, we already had a tone in place, or somewhat of a tone in place, which helped a lot. And so it actually was what shaped the design rather than vice versa.
And just to add one thing about that is that even if you're doing some visual design, we usually have some slides that are related to content, where we try to play with the word. And even when we are designing the website, we don't use any lorem ipsum shit. We just do stuff with real content, even if it's not the best. But we are trying also to change the ideas, because everything is related. It's just like there's no UX, UI, blah, blah, blah. It's just like a full thing. And yes, content is always part of that. And I do read it's mostly important for any kind of project.
Yeah, I think same for us. So we really started defining what was our voice, our tone, and actually, I think what I sent first to Luc was our manifesto, like what we're gonna do, what's our mission, and then when you have really this set and well in place, and I think you can start think about the image. Yeah, I had something else, but I just forgot. For the sake.
Cool. I think we're going to wrap it up. If you have other questions, you can always ask during food and drinks. So yeah, thank you everyone for coming out, and thank you Zenly for the great space, and thank you of course to the 3 speakers. It was super interesting. Thanks for sharing all these stories. So I think we can give them a big round of applause.